All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everybody to another session. Today, we're going to be talking about job costing and how we can kind of turn the field data that we get into profit. We all like profit. My name is Chris Clausing. I am the Director of Government Programs for CEI. So we're the supportive services vendor for 5 states and really excited to be able to work with the DBEs and SBEs across all the states that we serve. And these kind of member meetup sessions are really designed to just offer additional information, educational sessions. We try to focus on things that are really critical for business operations, business efficiency, finding project opportunities, essentially growing your business. That's what we want to do. And our role as a supportive services provider is to kind of build that foundation because the end goal is for you to grow into bigger, larger contracts with the state DOTs, as well as, hopefully go from subcontractor to prime contractor. So that's really our goal is to get you across the finish line to kind of graduate you from the program and continue to grow your business. So to me, this topic is really critical because job costing is something that a lot of times is not done very well. And it's such a critical piece to understanding where is my money going? How is it being allocated across my projects? And I think most importantly is what is the trend of that money? Am I losing money in certain areas? Do I have larger margins in other areas? Those are opportunities for you to either start improving efficiency in areas that you're losing money, maybe an estimating part of it, you're underbidding projects, specific scopes of work, or also maybe you're doing really, really well on certain areas of projects. And maybe it's time to just focus on that scope of work and leverage a high margin business versus a really tight margin business. So having this job cost data is really a critical piece to making informed business decisions. So my email is on the slide. We also have Joe Malozzi on. Joe, if you want to say a quick hello, Joe's one of our business advisors.
Hi, everyone. My email is right on the screen underneath my face there. So if you have any questions or want to set an appointment with me, by all means. I had an early morning appointment with Janelle this morning. So I'm used to any time that fits you, I can set my schedule to.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, and I also I made the chat available to everybody. So if Joe, you want to throw the email in there as well, it's perfect.
Yep.
Throw that in the chat. It should be set up for everybody. Yep, sure should be. And also LinkedIn. I'm addicted to LinkedIn. It's an unhealthy obsession that I have with LinkedIn. So please feel free to connect with me. And if you post pictures of your business or projects that you're doing, if you tag me on those, I will repost those. So just feel free to tag me on any LinkedIn post. I only do LinkedIn. That's the only one. I only have time for one social media, but I really like it. What we're going to learn today, we've got a lot of information to cover. We're going to be going for basically an hour today. We're going to be talking about how we take the raw field data. I think that's where kind of the very first step of this is where a lot of fumbles happen. How do we get that raw field data into something that we can analyze? Job costing fundamentals. So how do we set this job cost system up? How do we code it? How do we allocate across different scopes of work within projects or different projects? Technology platforms, we're always going to talk about that and how AI can assist. Optimizing our workflows. So once we kind of have our design and implementation in, can we scale that workflow, that process, and then how do we measure success here? What does winning look like? How do we know that this system is working for us? I guarantee you get an effective job costing system in there. You're gonna see things you've never seen before. It's gonna really open your eyes into how your business is actually doing. So that's the hope today is we're gonna hit those topics. And then by the end, we want to be able to, of course, identify and categorize what key components of a job cost, what are they, the direct costs, indirect costs, the labor burden, what does that mean, overhead, and how this allocates or is relevant for your business. Evaluating and selecting platforms. We did this is basically a series of AI sort of centered or focused sessions that we've done. This is the third one, I believe the third one. The first one we kind of cover in more detail about how to evaluate and vet and select and implement an AI platform. So this one, we're going to cover that briefly here, but it's really important. There's certain things that you want to make sure that you have a nice process in place for evaluating different systems because there's so many on the market and more coming on every day. And then design and implementation. How are we going to implement this system? Even if you have an existing job costing system, which I'm sure most of you do, maybe through QuickBooks or some other platform, is it optimized, right, for my business? So whether you don't have one at all, whether you have one and you don't know really how to use it, or whether you've used one for a long time, we want to make sure that you're getting the most out of whatever system you have in place. So the job costing is the foundation. It's really the only way that you can identify why my business is profitable. I mean, simple spreadsheets and financial statements and things can tell you a snapshot in time. Yes, I'm making money. My cash flow is on the positive side. But why is that? If you don't know the why of that, your business cannot be successful. You're just lucky. You have to know the whys. And job costing is the infrastructure which gets you to the why. So very important. And as I mentioned, why it matters, it reveals the true project profitability. So again, revenue is meaningless. Even if you're making a $100 million company, who cares? What matters is how much money, how much profit are you making? Where am I making that profit? Do I know where I'm making that profit? Because then I can think strategically and now turn that revenue stream into uh, retirement and do fun things and have nice stuff and support my family, etc. Uh, Identifies cost overruns before they really get out of control. And I believe in being proactive versus reactive as a business owner. So job costing is going to help you be proactive. Improves future estimating accuracy. So again, if I'm making mistakes on estimates and I don't know what mistakes I'm making or where I'm making those mistakes, I'm just going to continue to make those mistakes. And sometimes those mistakes may be compounded because I may not really understand that I'm losing money on this part, but I think I'm making money. So enable data-driven decision making there is really just focusing specifically on how am I going to use technology and platforms to scale this process and make it sort of almost automated. And then creating the competitive bidding advantage, of course, if you're able to spin off, submit better proposals, more accurate proposals, your business is gonna do better and you're gonna drive more revenue. And then we all know the cost of inaccuracies. Hit profits get hit. You're building bad estimates on bad data. Your cash flow becomes a problem. You're always robbing Peter to pay Paul, at the end of projects. If you're doing that, it's because your job costing system is either non-existent or not effective. Lost opportunities for mispriced bids. Been there, done that. There's so many times I'm just rolling around like, oh, I can't believe we lost that bid because we didn't bid it right, we didn't price it right, and then no visibility. Again, you want to have data to compare. And now that we're in the AI age, I mean, it is incredible what you can do now versus what you could do just 5 years ago. Forget 20 years ago. We're talking, 6 months ago. It's crazy how much this has evolved, and now the AI platforms are better. And really, all AI is making you. It's basically a co-pilot. It's helping you sift through data more effectively. That's what AI at its core is. It's basically an assistant to help you sift through data, analyze that data, and then be able to pull out actionable insights from the data, which otherwise would take us hours, days, if not weeks of time to do, and the accuracy would not necessarily be there. So we're going to talk right now about some of the components of a job costing system, basically the costing types. So you have direct costs. So these are going to be costs that are tied directly to a project. So these are costs that you would not incur if you did not have the project. So we need to be able to capture them. These are kind of the easiest ones to capture, right? I mean, if you think about indirect costs are a little more complicated. We'll get those in a minute. But basically labor. So, if I don't have a project, I don't have labor necessarily assigned to that project. Materials, right? If I don't have a project, I'm not going to buy materials for a project I don't have. And I'm not going to rent equipment for a project that I don't have. So all these are going to be kind of direct. Labor can be both a direct and indirect. Just depends on the type of labor. But if you're on a, for your field workers and crews are going to be allocated to direct versus a office staff or administrative assistant inside, which is someone who's working and their time's being allocated across multiple projects, that could be an indirect cost. And then, of course, all your materials and equipment, we all know what that is. Um, Here, we're going to just kind of highlight a little bit. And I know I'm preaching to the choir for the most part here. Everyone is experiencing this in real time. But you have a lot of these indirect costs, which I consider to be kind of like hidden costs beyond the direct costs. So when we're thinking about our estimates and where we might be losing money and missing and not having accurate estimates and being short the end of the project and not really understanding why. But of course, certain projects you're gonna have permits, you're gonna have inspections. Are you allocating for those temporary facilities? Are you for the salaries of the PMs, equipment compliance, quality control, all of those? You have office rent, utilities, administrative staffing. There's a lot to consider in kind of developing direct costs or overhead costs or indirect costs. So really, if you're failing to kind of recover some of the overhead that exist within your business, it's going to be difficult to be successful. Your profits are going to continue to erode. So we want to make sure that we're kind of thinking through what costs we are. So this is something, and this is just a rough up sketch here of something that I see very commonly or especially with new companies. You have a employee, let's say you pay him $25 an hour. You can't bill that because you have something called labor burden, which is the cost of actually having that employee beyond just what you're paying them. So you get your FICA taxes, which is Social Security, Medicaid tax, which you have to match, right? So that comes out of their half of that. Basically, they pay that out of their paycheck, and then you have to match it out of the company. So that's on top of this $25 wage. You have workers' comp, be another, depending on the scope of work that you're doing or the type of labor it is, that can be very expensive. It's a higher risk occupation. On top of that, you might have benefits, 401k. Maybe you have health insurance that you're matching or contributing to, other benefits that you might have, bonuses, overtime, whatever, a lot of different things. So your true hourly cost is much higher. In some cases, it can be, 40, 50, 60% higher than your actual base wage. So for any project, labor is going to be typically your most expensive part of that project. So if you're missing on your labor costs, it's going to really impact your bottom line. So we want to make sure that we understand what labor burden is, what our costs are there, and platforms like I love QuickBooks. I think it's a great platform for what I did when I was in construction. Really helps you with this. Make sure that you're capturing all that labor burden, and you can pull reports. Categorization. So really what we're, at the very high level, and we'll get into this further into the presentation, but at a very high level, what we're trying to do here is understand, okay, first of all, what is it that we do? So we do paving, or we do striping, or we're a subcontractor that lays steel. Maybe we do concrete work, or whatever your scope of work is, right? So with that scope of work or scopes of work, there's going to be cost associated with you actually doing that job. So we want to be able to categorize what that work is, right? So you're going to have labor, you're going to have material, you're going to have equipment, you're going to have you might have other costs associated with it, that go with it. So we want to make sure that we're categorizing that those channels or those different types of work that we're doing. Those are really the cost codes that we're trying to develop. So now whenever we enter all of these expenses that we get an invoice, we're expensing it. We want to assign it to one of these categories that we have set up. So those are our job codes. And then we want to allocate that, let's say maybe that invoice or that expense to either a single project or a single type of work, scope of work, or it could be allocated across multiple scopes of work if you're allocating across multiple projects. So it could be a piece of equipment that's going from this job to this job to this job, or a truck that's delivering, and maybe you're allocating that asset, the depreciation of that asset across multiple projects throughout the year. So all this is called allocation. So what it's going to do for you to have true accurate allocation, right? It's going to give you true project cost that's reliable data. Now you can build better estimates. You don't have this hidden expense of allocation sitting there ready to eat you, at the end of the project. Versus poor allocation, again, you have those hidden costs. You don't see an accurate profit picture. So, at the end of the project or the end of the year, you're sitting there short, you don't know why. And that puts you in a really bad spot. So you want to make sure that every dollar is tracked to the right job phase, the cost codes are accurate, and that's going to take time, and that's going to take work and training, because not only your team, your team are going to have to understand that process, but also your subs and the people that are invoicing you could also going to have to understand when they're tracking time, where to allocate that. So we want to make sure that we use proper cost allocation strategically. Okay. So standardization is really the key. And so there's no set standard. You can do this however you want, but I would just say stay consistent. This is just an example. I think this one's using some of the codes associated with master format. Joe, you might check me on that, but I'm pretty sure those are the master format codes. So that's one option because those are consistent across the nation. And then they're using essentially letters at the end to designate labor, materials, equipment. You could have more categories in this. You could have different types of stuff. So however you want to set this up, but be consistent. So, and make sure that it's consistent across all the platforms that you're using. So if you're using QuickBooks, you want to make sure your cost codes are assigned properly and that you have enough cost codes to capture a really good picture. So I think that's another issue is, maybe 2 or 3 cost codes might not be enough. You might need more than that to really kind of drill down and make sure. So that's up to you, whatever your business is, how granular you want to get with that. But you want to have consistent categorization. You want to also be able to make sure that you can compare. So when you're pulling reports, you want to have historical data versus current data. And that's going to show you different trends, right? So it's going to give you a snapshot of whether we're trending up, down, we're flat, whatever that is. And that's going to be very important when you're starting to think strategically. Detailed variance. The variances are great. It's a visual, like we're improving here, we're not improving here. And ideally, you want to do what's called closing the feedback loop. So this data is here for a reason. It's not just to look at, right? You want to implement that into your next bid or estimate or your next project. You want to close that feedback loop, implement, okay, we are bleeding in this area. We need to fix it. So you implement the fix. Now you pull a report on the next project. You compare the data and say, okay, are we improving or not? So if you're improving, that that strategy, whatever you did to fix that bleeding, has worked, right? And then you continue to monitor that and make sure that you get you back up. So that's what really nimble, successful businesses do. They use comparative historical data to make sure that they're trending in the right direction. So we want to make sure that your system has the same thing. So you're going to see us also reference this work breakdown structure, WBS. So it's really just a hierarchical organization of different scopes of work. So sometimes your WBS may be very simple. If you're a larger company doing a lot of different projects across a lot of different scopes of work, you could have a very complicated WBS. I think it's so critical to the old-fashioned way. Put your WBS on paper first. Think through it, write it down. How, the scopes of work that we do, how do we go through our process systematically, like breaking down our deliverables, start with the big deliverables and then break those down into smaller deliverables. Some people might call this like a decision tree, if this, then this, right? And you're building out all these different things. It's a great exercise to really start to understand the intricacies of your business. But it does provide you with like a very clear framework for an entire project. It's going to make sure that you're really accurately allocating for the different costs, that you're budgeting properly. Your planning and scheduling, progress tracking is going to also improve. We're going to be doing a session soon. Hopefully, we've got pull it together. But on the difference between planning and scheduling, cost coding is so critical for that. Understand, scheduling is how we're going to do things, like the sequence of things that we're going to do, whereas planning is sort of how we're going to make this happen, the different logistics involved. And then, of course, tracking your progress as you're going through. Are we capturing the adequate revenue depending on how far along we are on the project, not just percentage completion of the project, but also tied to revenue. Are we capturing enough money to cover our expenses up to that point in the project? So these are all different things we'll cover in future classes, but job costing is again the foundation for those. And then we want to make sure that everybody understands that what our structures are. So you might see a work breakdown structure sort of broken down in this way, where you have the job number, phaser area. So what is your scope? What is the actual cost code and what's allocated to? And then your cost type. So this might be the way that you do it. So again, however you set that up is up to you, but you want to make sure that it's consistent and that it's detailed enough so that you can actually get some actionable data from it. So kind of wrapping up on the WBS part of it, so you do want to make sure it's balanced. So sometimes being too simple it won't allow you to get enough information. So you want to make sure that it's nice and balanced. You want it to align with your estimates. So that's another thing that I've seen is you have cost codes that are in your system, which is great, and then your estimate is not even aligned to the cost codes. So it's really hard to do an apples for apples comparison. So you want to make sure that whatever your cost codes are, that they're in your accounting platform, that they're tied to how you spin up your estimates. So if you have an estimating platform that you build estimates in, you want to make sure those two are talking to each other and that they're standardized. Standardization across projects, again, very important. I know there's different projects that you do. Maybe there are even different scopes of work across those projects that you do, but you want to make sure everything's standardized and that you're built for scale. So what that basically means is that you have a nice foundation and that will sustain rapid growth. So growth is not scaling. Scalability is infrastructure. It's how you build your systems so that when you do grow, that you can grow appropriately. You're growing on a scaffolding, on an infrastructure that supports that growth versus growth without scale is just you're growing, and then eventually you can't support the weight of the growth because there's no infrastructure and it collapses. So I've seen businesses grow, fail. That means they don't have the proper infrastructure. They're not built for scalability. And I've seen companies grow, and they continue to grow because they've built that infrastructure. So that's what we're trying to help you do is kind of build that infrastructure so that when you do grow, you're able to support that growth. So hierarchical cost tracking, again, this kind of ties into you've built this work breakdown structure, this WBS. So now, how are you going to compare across different jobs? So you want to make sure that you're tracking all your costs across multiple projects. Again, for reporting, you want to be sure that you're able to report in a way that is apples to apples. This will improve your estimating. I promise you that. You are going to find things that you are like, whoa, we've been losing money on this for 5 years and we had no idea. So it could make a big difference in your estimates. And sometimes when you clean up an area, like you might think, hey, we're pretty competitive on pricing, but we're not at our win rate that we want to be at. We want to be at a 20% win rate versus where we're at now. Maybe we're at a 5 or 10. It could mean literally like you don't even have to necessarily drop your pricing that much. If you find efficiencies in some of your things that you're doing in areas that now you can make a little tighter, you can actually increase your margins while still reducing the price and increase your win rate. So job costing can help you to do that. Early overrun detection, huge. I know we're all overwhelmed and busy, and when I was building, I didn't even want to see comparative data. I was just like, get me through this job and let's, I don't want to talk to this owner again, sort of thing. But now we have so many platforms in place that can help you detect early, overrun potential. So these types of variances, now there's platforms literally when you have a variance, it's going to alert you. You can attack it right away. So again, we want to be proactive in the way that we're attacking these things. From paper to digital, I know it's a tough, sometimes there's a lot of people kicking and screaming, but the field data revolution has begun. construction has always been a very slow adopter of technology, but it's there's no choice now. The every platform, every system is all your subs, all the primes, all the DOTs you work with, they're all getting rid of paper. Even plans now, a lot of most, especially like in Florida specifically, which is where I live, you can't even submit paper plans. They don't accept them. Everything's digital. So if you haven't sort of started to transition to that way of thinking, and I know it's hard, I'm with you. You have to start thinking that way, or else you're gonna be in the Stone Ages, and that's going to be difficult for your business to grow. And if you ever want to sell your business or hand your business down to your kids, I can tell you, kids don't want a business that's not scalable and ready to go. That's just called a headache for them. So you want to make sure that you're getting towards that digital platform. So we're gonna, instead of handwritten timesheets, we have a platform for that, right? Captures that information in real time. Manual expense logs, paper receipts. I was a paper receipt guy. Now for me, I use Concur. I take a picture of the receipt. I still keep the receipts because in my brain, I can't not keep a paper receipt. But, all the receipts are now captured on the cloud digitally and assigned to the expense. I don't have to do it. It's all done for me automatically when I upload the receipt. So I know it's hard, but now it's crazy the stuff that's out there. You just take a picture of it. You don't even need to keep it. Like literally, I could throw that whole box, have a whole box of receipts. I can see it from my desk. And my wife's like, I'm throwing these out. I'm like, no, don't throw them. I can't let go. But I have started doing the digital receipt, and it's unbelievable. So I recommend that. Data entry delays, right? So we'll make sure that we have those sync real time. Um, uh, Errors with handwriting, all those things. We want visibility. So these are all just the new way of doing things. So real-time labor tracking. So this is another thing that, man, I wish I'd had this when I was building. Basically, clock in, clock out from any device, even if there's salary. I like this because it can help me identify like how many true hours the teams are working, which is going to help me just again to come up with because labor is such a big part of the expenses for the business. So how is my labor doing? When are they starting? When are they finishing? How much time are they spending per project? Cost code assignment, again, key. You can get a bookkeeper. You don't need a full-blown CPA for this. Bookkeeper can do it. If you're using QuickBooks, they have a bookkeeper you can hire who's at QuickBooks. It's 600 bucks. I mean, it's very inexpensive. They set up the system for you, get your cost codes right, look through what you do. I highly recommend that or some version of that you want to get that. You want to get the foundation early. How you were going to supervisors are going to approve the workflows, and then payroll sync. There's so many, I know in this business that a lot of you are in, you have certified payrolls, and it's a little more complicated in Davis-Bacon rules and all these things. So you want to make sure that the system that you use can accommodate the complexities of the type of work that you might be doing. But all this can be done real time now. So, I mean, basically, this is the process now. Instead of, buy something, put the paper receipt in the box, and then at the end of the year, kind of rummage through it and figure it all out. And maybe you enter it in your ledger, maybe you don't, who knows. But now it's you purchase, take a photo of it. The code's either you assign the code to it, it gets approved, it posts to your books, done. And then at the end of the month or the year, or however often you want to do it, you reconcile, and now you can see it's all done for you. So once you set that nice foundation and you have your job codes proper and they're assigned properly, not only does it make it much easier at the end of the year when you have to do the books and get ready for tax season and all that, you can pull reports. You can actually see how your business is doing. You can see this particular area we're doing really great. This particular area we're struggling, and that helps you to start drilling down and making strategic decisions. So it's sort of the version of working in the business versus on the business, which everyone's heard that saying, but really it's very important. If you're in the business in the weeds trying to figure out the books and accounting and just the administrative side of it, you're not able to go out there and find more work, build new networks, find new contacts, submit more proposals, RFPs, all the things that actually drive revenue. Sorting through a box of receipts will never drive a penny of revenue to your business ever, 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 ever. And so, what AI is really good at is taking those administrative tasks that really take, I call them basically like vampires. They are time vampires. These administrative tasks that drive no revenue, build no value, contribute in no way to your business, to your bottom line. They pay you nothing. They cost you. AI is built to take those situations, automate those at very low cost. Now you can take the team or the staff that was actually doing that work and you can put them on revenue generating activities like making outbound calls, posting on social media, finding new ways to market, analyzing our marketing efforts. How are we doing on Google AdWords? Do we need to go to association events? Frees up time for that. There's so many different things that these AI efficiencies are going to help us to actually start driving revenue. So this is just again a little bit off topic there, but this particular is about how are we going to build this workflow or this process of control and accountability. So it does start in the field, right? So if they're incurring expenses there, we want to make sure that they have the proper tools to do that. So it could be the digital platform they're using. They got to know the job costs. They got to be trained on that platform. Then whoever is the approver, maybe it's a project manager, maybe it's you, the owner, maybe it's a smaller organization. And then maybe you have the accountant or the bookkeeper to make the final approval, and then this can sort of be posted in the job cost. This is more for probably a little bit of a larger company, but you want to have some level of approval. Okay. So different technology platforms. There's a lot of different softwares. I'm going to kind of go through this fairly quickly. Like we're not here necessarily to promote one platform over another. We just want to give you some criteria for how do we find a platform that works. And I'm a big fan of looking for platforms that are related to your industry. Now, a platform like QuickBooks is pretty specific across, pretty general, but they have specific versions. So, and really the only reason those are specific versions is going to be for job costing. So there's going to be a separate set of job costing related to construction versus if you're in a hairdresser or if you are running an accounting business or some other law firm, right? Your cost codes are going to be different. So that's always helpful to get a templated version specific to your industry. But you want to make sure that especially for construction, especially if you're doing public work, right? Your certified payroll, your prevailing wage reporting, all that should be integrated into there. Most of them will have a feature like that, or they can integrate something like that. If you're working with unions, retention tracking, and change order management, we're going to get into that in a minute. So just kind of different things we want to make sure that are sort of core to whatever it is that your business requires. You want to make sure the platform you select can do that. Cloud versus on-premise. This is basically where's the data going to be stored. I'm a big fan of cloud-based, right? Because it doesn't crash. It's backed up real time. No one can come in and steal it. It can't go up in a fire. It's not going to get wet if there's a flood, et cetera, et cetera. So having cloud-based where possible, I'm a big fan of, versus some sort of on-premise system. So it gives you lower costs. You can access it from anywhere. That's probably the biggest thing. Real time, it's scalable. It's very easy to implement versus on-premise system that could be very complicated. So if you already have a legacy on-premise system that you want to convert to a cloud-based, that's a conversation you're going to have to probably have with yourself and your team, and understand what's the ROI for that. Does that make sense for us? And that's going to be a company by company decision. But if you're starting from scratch, I would just highly recommend go that cloud-based route and have everything so that you can access it from, and also make sure it's mobile friendly. That's my opinion, because you're not going to have your laptop necessarily with you on a job site. You're going to always have your phone or even a tablet that you can use with you. So you want to make sure that it can work on the job site. So integration, we want to make sure that, again, if you're using multiple systems, it needs to be able to integrate into your existing systems. And we've talked about that in the last two sessions that we've done, is this concept of integration. So most platforms will integrate with other platforms. So that's basically just they call it an API. How do they talk to one another? Can they communicate together? Most of them have gotten it figured out. So for instance, if you're working, let's say in a Procore, and that's where you're managing your projects from Procore, you might have a separate scheduling uh, platform that connects to Procore. You might have a separate estimating platform that connects to Procore. You might have an extra job costing accounting platform like QuickBooks that connects to Procore. So everything's sort of integrated and they all talk to each other, right? And Procore is sort of the center of that wheel. You want to make sure you have integration. What you don't want to do is get hemmed up in a program or a platform that does not talk to the other systems or platforms. That's just going to cause confusion and chaos. So, and make sure that you have the integration, that they all talk to each other. So that you have sort of the central source of truth, essentially. Everyone's looking at the same data, that they're all talking to one another. So your equipment costs are going to go straight to the job costs. Your time and attendance is going to go to the labor cost. Your accounts payable, right? It's going to go straight over to, again, your job costs. So it's all integrated. All the data is flowing properly. You can pull reporting from it effectively. So this is going to be something that you want to make sure is, you know, integrated into the system that you choose. Again, just some basic ones. We're not going to get into this today, but just again, a QuickBooks I like. There's other options. You might have other ones that aren't here. These are just some basic ones, but we're also going to get into sort of a checklist. I think in this presentation, a checklist of how to sort of really high level, like what to look for in a system, how to vet it, make sure it's the right fit for me, sort of that process of making that decision. But as I mentioned, yeah, the future of job costing is here. Now we have all these fancy, crazy systems, this concept of machine learning, essentially, where these AI models are learning on our data. They're getting better and better at understanding our business, what we do, and analyzing the data that we put into it, and they call it training. So training your model. The more you use an AI system, it becomes better at understanding what it is that you do, the outputs that you like, and the things that you want to see. And then it sort of customizes itself behind the scenes to make sure. So the more you use a system, sort of the better and better it's meant to get. Predictive analytics, I love this for construction. I've seen some crazy, crazy advances in, especially in safety. So there's platforms you literally go to a job site. There's camera systems already installed, or you can take pictures with your phones. But just think through this: a camera system's installed. That camera is being constantly monitored by this AI platform. So if somebody's walking across and they accidentally drop a 2x4 and now it becomes a trip hazard, it can automatically alert the safety officer or you or whoever needs to be alerted. Hey, there's a potential trip hazard that just happened, and you go in there and you take that trip hazard away immediately. Versus, now you find out about the trip hazard after someone's tripped, right? And you go back to that workers' comp claim and all of those things where now your mod rate's going to go up and up and up. So crazy advances. Predictive analytics too also goes towards even like scheduling. There's systems now where you can import a schedule or build out a schedule, and they can literally analyze and predict potential bottlenecks, delays, things like that. I can look at historical data and say, well, look, you're starting this job in November, and you have basically put a timeline together that does not account for weather delays and issues with snow and issues with maybe no accessibility to the project. Or maybe you're in a time now where there's a lot of your team is away for holidays, and you didn't account for that. So this is the technologies now are so incredible, and there's so many of them. It's like kind of overwhelming, but there's so many of them that they're super helpful to make sure that financially that you're kind of covered and protected. So we're going to get into that a little bit. We talked a little bit about the machine learning. So it's going to analyze that historical job data. So we want to make sure that we're also storing our data. It could be in a SharePoint folder or a OneDrive or a Google Drive, somewhere that those documents can be accessed. And we also talked previously in a previous one about how to name the files that you're actually storing. So not only do you want your job code to be consistent in terms of a file sort of naming convention, Also, your documents, you want to make sure that you have a really good naming convention. So check that out. We talked a little bit about that, gave you some samples on that in the last class. But machine learning for estimating, I love because it can identify any potential issues, areas that you might be delayed or rather inaccurate or underbidding, or maybe areas that you've overbid. And if you really want this contract, like you might be able to cut here and submit a more aggressive proposal. OCR invoice automation, we talked about this already, where you take pictures of the invoice or scan it. You can also, I mean, the picture thing is crazy and it reads how much it is. It automatically applies it to the vendor and it's just so easy. But it can also allocate those cost codes, route them automatically. All this is automation. Predictive analytics we already talked about. So how do we forecast overruns or issues based on trends that we've seen in the past? Again, AI is built for that. It's built for data analytics. And then automated dashboards. This is where you would monitor your KPIs, where really you're kind of overseeing the implementation of the platform. What is it that we're tracking? What is it we want to know on an ongoing basis? Like that, those are going to be your KPIs, right? We want to improve in this area. We want to improve in this area. We want to see an increase in profit by this amount. So now the systems can all be streamlined for that. And I would say that for to really implement or roll out a platform and you know, for instance, like QuickBooks. QuickBooks in and of itself is not an AI platform, but it has an AI agent embedded in QuickBooks. That's really what I'm saying now is not just standalone AI products, but AI assistants integrated into existing legacy systems. So you see that with basically every system by now has integrated some version 1.0 at least, of some sort of AI agent. And what that's really doing is just helping the customer to be able to ask questions instead of, before you'd have to go to an area, maybe a help area, and you would type in keywords and it would pull up articles or links to different things, almost like tutorials, right, or FAQs. So now AI automates that process. AI does all that for you. Now you just say, okay, I need to do this, and then AI does all that research for you, and then spits out what it thinks is the answer. And that's where we're at today. And so it saves you a lot of time. You don't have to go and look at different things. So you need that AI integration. I would say whatever platform you use, you want to make sure there's some sort of AI agent that's there that can help you if you have questions or you need to sort of analyze data, draw reports from that data, have it interpret that information. So data quality is really key to make that work. So you want to make sure that your whatever system you're using, that you're putting quality data in there. Now you're going to have estimates and schedules and things that miss. This is why the historical data is so critical, and those metrics that you're tracking are really important. So the AI model is going to know, like, okay, this estimate we missed here, here, and here, but we did really well here, here, and here. And then it can analyze that, and now it can help you tailor a proposal now, saying, okay, remember, historically you've really missed here, here, and here. Like you're putting this number, and it should be this number. And so that's where the data quality becomes really important. And it suggests 2 to 3 years of records. I mean, whatever. You start where you start and you keep growing and just start building that up. And you're always going to take that human touch. So it's not, AI is, artificial intelligence, HI is what I call human intelligence. And it's never AI over HI, never. It's never that. It's HI, human intelligence, over AI. AI is there to support you. It's there to make your job more efficient, get you out of the admin tasks so you can focus on the SME stuff, the subject matter expert stuff that you know. And so that's really the key. You want to make sure that you're reviewing everything. It's gonna give you outputs. It's gonna hopefully those outputs are accurate, but not always. Infrastructure, obviously you need infrastructure of using a cloud-based system. You gotta have internet. That's pretty much easy now. People, process, this is where it gets a little tricky. Change management, really key. You got to have leadership buy-in. You got to have a proper training strategy in place. We're supportive services. We're here to help you with resources there. We want to make sure that those platforms that you're utilizing are the correct fit for your business. So use this as a resource. I mean, we can't tell you one way or another what to do, but we can kind of get a sense of what what are the important things for your business, what are the problems you're trying to solve for, and we can give you some advice on how to move forward on some of these. And then realistic expectations. There's a saying, AI is meant to be a co-pilot, not an autopilot. And I love that saying because it's totally true. It's not going to run your business for you. It's just there as a tool, just like any other tool. And so you got to have realistic expectations, and you want to start small. And we talked about that in a previous class. But so building consistency across all projects. So we want to make sure that we're utilizing our cost codes in our estimating, that we're setting up our projects once we get them properly in the system, that our team is trained on that, that our ops teams, everyone who's dealing with our projects on a daily basis, that they're utilizing the platform to capture costs and they're properly coded, those are approved quickly. Weekly review, I can't stress that enough. You have to make sure and monitor, especially in the early stages of an implementation of any new platform, whether it's AI or not, any new platform, you got to have these weekly reviews. Is my team using it? Is it doing what we want it to do? Is everyone using it properly? Right? They're properly trained. Where can we identify? You want to also, have your monthly closing reports. So this is all about reporting, work in progress. Is it accurate? How are we showing in terms of profitability? I love that. And when I'm in a project and I've set everything up properly and have assigned values to the different scopes of work properly tied to my schedule, now I can actually see, okay, how much money I've actually earned, right? And have I captured enough money from the owner, the project owner, depending on, if I'm 50% of the project on my schedule, but the halfway point of that project on paper in terms of number of days is actually 80% of the value of the project, but I've only captured 50% because I haven't assigned value to any of these activities. Well, now you're 30% in the hole. You're financing this project now at 30%. Now you're probably having to get a line of credit to carry yourself, and you're wondering what the heck happened when I'm 50% in this job. But I mean, I'm bleeding money. I don't have enough money now for other projects. I can't finish this project. A lot of that's because we're not assigning proper values to that work. So it's not, 50% down on the project in terms of days. It's 50% down on the project in terms of earned value. Okay. So we want to make sure that we have those properly set up. And then project closeouts. Have to look back. You're capturing all this data. What good is it if you don't assess it right at the end of the project? And I know that that's sort of like we're moving on to the next one, moving on to the next one. We got to keep moving. But now that we have AI, like AI can do this for you. It can actually take, okay, how do we do on the project? Boom, push a button and it spits it out. You did great here, 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 and here you need to work on, and we lost money here, here, and here. Sits out the summary, and that's it. So we're in a new age where we can make really good informed decisions. So we're getting close. We've got about 12 more minutes here. We'll barrel through the rest here. But reallocations is a little more complicated. I think we probably need for the scope of this presentation. But essentially, how are we going to, first of all, how are we going to fix when wrong job codes are entered? And that will happen, especially early on in an implementation. You're gonna have field staff, legacy team members that don't. It's all Greek to them. They have no idea. Yes, you've trained them, but they're still going to make mistakes. So you got to have that process to make sure, okay, we got to fix that, consistently improve that, consistently train. These are just some kind of reallocation scenarios. Might be equipment used across multiple jobs, salary that's split across multiple projects. These are the most common things. And so how is your system able to reallocate? Can you split time, split that across different job codes? But you want to make sure that your reallocations are documented, they're approved, and that you do have an audit trail so that you can understand why the time for this superintendent was divided across 3 projects. First of all, why? Okay, because he or she was responsible for these 3 projects. Is it allocated properly, right? So let's say it's a third each, but did they spend really 80% of the time here and only 10% here and 10% there? So you want to make sure that it's allocated properly, and then you want to review those reallocations on a monthly basis. And your platform will be able to manage all these for you. Protecting margins through change management. So this really refers to change orders. So I can't tell you enough. You have to cover yourself on change orders. So the way that you do it now instead of verbal and a handshake. That's great, but that's just going to lead to issues, especially in today's litigious age. So you want to make sure that everything's written, but even beyond written, you want to make sure that you have an automated approval process in place, platforms that you can use now that do this for you. So you're going to document that change. What is it that's changing? What scope of work's changing? You're going to estimate the cost. Going to get approval from all parties, all stakeholders. You want to track change orders separate so that you understand their impact specifically on the broader project. And then you're going to update the budget. And this all will be done in real time. Now it's all done in real time. So capturing the complete cost, this is something that your field teams, if they're the ones using the change order system or the change order process, and that's going to roll up to you. So you want to make sure that they're entering the correct information. So are they pulling the direct labor at the full burden? Are they accounting for the full materials, equipment costs, indirect costs, and overhead? Are they accounting for that overhead? And probably most important, aside from schedule impact, which is key, 100%, you want to have that schedule impact. What's this going to do? Is this going to delay us? This is a critical activity. Do we need to extend that critical path by a day, 2 days, whatever it is? Profit. We forget about that word. We always forget about that word. Profit is not what you pay yourself. What you pay yourself is including overhead. Profit is not a bonus that you necessarily get at the end of the year. Profit is money above and beyond what the business makes, above everything else, your salary, your 401k contribution, the money you save, the money you pay your employees, all of those things. Profit is that thing that allows you to retire. It allows you to sell your business for a lot of money. It allows you to get other investors to grow your business. Profit is the thing. And it's so often forgotten, especially with new businesses. And I've been there where you're just, I'm going to work for free until I make this thing work. But when you're thinking through your projects and your estimates and you're ignoring profit, you're not doing yourself any favors. You will be able to find projects where you can make profit, right? And that doesn't mean you're paying yourself out of that money. You've already paid yourself out of the project. Profit is that everything above and beyond. So just kind of keep that in mind. But you don't want to leave some of these things, improperly estimated for. So just kind of recapture some of that. Reporting is also really key. I would say of this list, I really like the budget versus actual report. This is going to tell me at the end of the project, this is what I budgeted for, this is what we estimated for the project for this particular scope. This is what actually was, and then that third column is that variance, right? So usually you'll have a dollar amount variance and then another column that's a percentage amount variance. And so this should be something that you are looking at every project, probably during the project. If you can really get your system set up properly, you can actually see real time, especially if you have those earned values proper in there. You can see not only where you're at in real time versus what I estimated, what I budgeted versus what the actual is. That's also a great way for you to potentially see issues coming up. So if you're trending downward, then this particular scope of work, man, I actually am under here. I've overbid, let's say, or underbid rather, this particular scope of work, and it's showing it's trending that way. How am I going to fix that, right? Because that's only going to get exacerbated the longer that happens. So at that point, if you're doing it during the process or during the project, and you can recognize it early, again, proactive versus reactive. Now you can proactively do things. Maybe you reallocate resources. Maybe you're doing better in another area. You can pull from there and allocate it to here, or more efficiently. Try to really focus in on that area to get that done, so it's not a headache. So there's a lot of things that you can do. That budget versus actual. I can't stress that enough. Work in progress, we talked about. You want to make sure that are you recognizing that revenue properly? What costs have been incurred? Where you're at in a profitability perspective, job profitability. So where's my gross margin? Where do I want to be? Labor productivity. Labor is such a beast on projects, and it's so hard to wrangle. especially if you're not necessarily on the project all the time. So a lot of times it's these systems that can identify, hey, this crew is not as efficient or productive as this crew. Now, there may be a reason. Maybe that job site's harder to get to. Maybe that project is more complicated, takes a lot more specific kind of trade work, whereas this project's got an easier accessibility. It's easier levels of work, and they're more productive. That's great. Then now you know. But you want to be able to be able to track that productivity and be able to compare. And again, just some of the reporting you want to be able, you have your basic kind of triangle here, your revenue, your cost, your profit margin. These are our biggest ones. And then you're going to go down to your project summary, then the different phases, then the cost code details, and then the actual individual transactions. So here you can see, you want to be able to see at any of these levels, right? This might be where the executive's sort of looking just to kind of you get an overview. This is where maybe your project managers are really trying to understand, okay, where are we at per project? This might be where your assistant project managers or your superintendents start to get involved. This is definitely where your supers and your foremen are going to be involved here. And then you have your transaction details. This is your foreman, your field staff that are entering the details here. So you want to make sure that the data that starts here is going to be accurate, coded properly, because now it's going to just funnel up, 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 up. So any mistakes down here are going to be exacerbated here, right? So we want to make sure that we have specific systems in place. Again, we already kind of talked about it. Who reports where and why and what the reason is. That's pretty self-explanatory, but you got your field crews, project managers, supers, your executive level team, and then of course your accounting, right? Could be your bookkeeper, your accountant. They're going to also want to be involved. So these are some things when you're measuring sort of, okay, what is it that we want to track and why? So, executives might have their own thing they want to track versus project managers. This is going to be specific to you and your business. So however you want to track different performance indicators is up to you. But these are just some different ideas and things that may be relevant for you. Let me see how we're doing on. So here's the process about implementation. We're going to go through this very quickly because we already covered a much more detailed version of this in an earlier session. I think our first session we went through a lot of the implementation process. But my advice would be to start with understanding, okay, what is a pain point that we want to solve for? In this case, we're talking about job costing. It could be anything though. So am I properly allocating my costs for my projects across my projects in a way that I have visibility, transparency, I can pull reports and I can actually see where I'm at. So you want to start somewhere, one specific, I would say, pain point. And then from there, you want to start with a small pilot. So don't try to solve everything with one platform right out of the gate. So just say, okay, I want to start with this particular platform. We're going to just work on getting our cost codes right. That's where we're going to start. And that might be a free trial that you do. And let's set up our cost code system, make sure, see if that even works. Does that make sense for us, right? We're doing that WB as a work breakdown structure and then building out our cost codes accordingly. That could be a great way to start going through your implementation. But start small. You want to make sure that it's a project that's not a critical project, but it's something that's attainable. You also want to make sure that you have the proper timing. This is just an example of different phases. And I will make this, we're going to send a follow-up email with the recording and this presentation. So you have access to the presentation so you can go through it. But you want to make sure that you have a phased execution process in place. So how much time we're going to allocate to pilot, to the actually expanding it across the organization, and then we're going to fully roll it out to all of our field staff. So kind of come through with that type of system. And then, of course, training is going to be clear. You want to make sure that you have communicate to the team why we're doing this. You want to involve your hands-on team. Everyone should be involved, and then be patient. I would say that's really the biggest takeaway is be patient. It's going to take time, and it's something that is not going to happen overnight, but that you can certainly accomplish some amazing things in a very short period of time. These are just some resources that you might consider Obviously, there's going to be, I love AGC stuff. They have a lot of great stuff on their website. National, the NAHB is also really good. They got a lot of good stuff on specific to job costing, just construction management in general. So I'd recommend anything here. If you're going to go to a software vendor, make sure you can get a free trial. Make sure that they have an implementation team that's going to help you to implement this into your organization and that they understand the systems that you're currently using so that they'll integrate. And then, as I mentioned, we are here to support you in any way that we can. So please reach out to us. We are the supportive services vendor, so we want to be here to make sure that you're successful and that you're implementing the right system for what you want to do. Our next session, we're going to be covering how to find project opportunities. So that's going to be March 11th. So feel free to scan the QR code here. I'm also going to provide a link in the follow-up email we're going to send to you along with the recording and the actual presentation. You can register for that. It's going to be a great session, and hopefully we can give you some ideas on where to find projects. We'll cover the different procurement areas within the states and the state level, probably go through some federal procurement opportunities as well. And again, just to kind of give you, we want to make sure that you have all the opportunities that you have available to you. So with that, I know we're 1 minute over, but I just wanted to thank you all for joining us. I hope you found some value in what we covered today. We definitely would love to hear from you. So you can scan the QR code here. This will send you to a very, very short survey. So you can kind of tell us what we're doing right, maybe what we're doing wrong, and things that we can do to improve. And also, please include in there any ideas, topics. You can email me as well, topics that you'd like for us to cover. So we can definitely cover whatever topics are relevant for you. So with that, I'll let you guys get back to the field. Joe, thank you for participating. I appreciate it. And for everyone who joined us today, thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.